My mom's research partner moved in to help with her rare autoimmune disease. I was looking through her old chemistry notes when I realized the medicine he'd been injecting her with for 6 months was actually a modified neurotoxin from her own lab. My mom used to say her lab coat was her superhero cape. She'd wear it while making breakfast, pretending molecules of scrambled eggs were teaching me chemistry. Even at 14, I still smiled when she'd draw chemical formulas in the steam on the bathroom mirror. So when she collapsed during my school orchestra concert, crumpling mid-applause like someone had cut her strings, I knew real life didn't have superheroes. Dr. Gustav was at the hospital within the hour. Mom's research partner from the university, where they'd been developing some kind of revolutionary substance delivery system for cancer patients. He held my hand in the waiting room with just the right amount of pressure. "Sophie, your mom is the strongest person I know," he said, his voice steady like he was reading from a medical journal. "We're going to figure this out together." The diagnosis came fast. A rare autoimmune condition attacking her nervous system. Progressive. Incurable. Dr. Gustav had tears in his eyes when he explained it, but something felt rehearsed about the way they fell. "I'm moving in," he announced that same night. "She'll need round-the-clock medical supervision, and I won't let her go through this without the best care." Dad was too shell-shocked to argue. Mom was too weak. Dr. Gustav took over our guest room like he was setting up a medical command center. Monitors, 4 stands, boxes of medications with names I couldn't pronounce. He wore Dad's old slippers, used Mom's favorite coffee mug, the one I'd made her in 3rd grade with "World's Best Scientist" painted in crooked letters. For months, I watched him inject her with treatments, watched her get weaker despite his cutting-edge therapies. He'd pat my head when I asked too many questions. "Medical school is tough, Sophie. Let me handle the complicated stuff." But I was my mother's daughter. I started reading her old textbooks, researching her condition online until my eyes burned. Nothing about her symptoms made sense. The progression was wrong. The medication doses seemed off. When I mentioned it, Dr. Gustav laughed. "Google isn't medical school, kiddo." Mom tried to work from bed sometimes, mumbling about her research, about being so close. Dr. Gustav would increase her sedatives, saying she needed rest. Dad started sleeping in the living room because the medical equipment disturbed his sleep. I heard him crying through the walls. The night everything changed was Mom's birthday. She'd been too weak to eat cake, but I'd brought her a piece anyway. Dr. Gustav was at a medical conference. I found her more alert than she'd been in weeks, trying to write something on a napkin with a shaking hand. "Sophie," she whispered, "my laptop. Password is your middle name and Dad's birthday. Look at the formulation. Compare it to—" She started seizing before she could finish. While Dr. Gustav rushed back to adjust her medications, I snuck into Mom's old office. Her laptop was buried under medical journals. I opened her research files, cross-referencing the chemical compounds she'd been developing with the medications Dr. Gustav had been giving her. My hands went cold. The treatment he'd been injecting her with was almost identical to a neurotoxin compound from her own research, but with just enough modifications to make it undetectable in standard tests. Her revolutionary substance delivery system wasn't just for cancer patients. It could deliver anything, untraceably, over time. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly photographed everything with my phone. Dr. Gustav appeared in the doorway, still in his white coat. "Can't sleep, Sophie? Just missed being in here," I lied, closing the laptop. He smiled, but his eyes were calculating. "Your mom's work was always beyond both of us, wasn't it?" 3 days later, I was at school when the principal pulled me out of calculus. Mom had taken a turn for the worse, but when I got to the hospital, her room was empty except for Dr. Gustav. "Where is she?" I demanded. "Transferred to a specialist facility," he said smoothly. "I'll take you to see her after we stop by the house. There are some papers your father needs to sign." I knew he was lying. I could see it in the way he kept checking his phone, the way he gripped his car keys too tight. I excused myself to the bathroom and called 911 from a stall, whispering about medical fraud and attempted unaliving. Then I sent all the photos to my chemistry teacher and my dad. Dr. Gustav was gone when I came out. Security footage later showed him fleeing the hospital. They found Mom sedated in a van in the parking garage, IV lines ready to deliver a lethal dose. The police didn't believe me at first. The officer who took my statement kept glancing at his partner, probably thinking I was just another hysterical teenager watching too much true crime. But when they pulled the security footage and saw Dr. Gustav wheeling Mom toward that van, everything changed. I spent the next 3 hours at the police station, explaining everything I'd discovered. The chemical compounds, the modified neurotoxin, how Dr. Gustav had been slowly poisoning my mother while pretending to treat her. Dad arrived halfway through, his face a mixture of shock and rage I'd never seen before. He gripped my hand so tight it hurt while I walked the detectives through Mom's research files. They found Dr. Gustav at a motel 40 miles away, trying to destroy evidence, but I'd already sent copies of everything to multiple people. My chemistry teacher had immediately forwarded the files to a colleague at the FBI who specialized in medical crimes. The evidence was preserved before Gustav could eliminate it. Mom spent 2 weeks in intensive care while real doctors flushed the toxins from her system. I practically lived in that hospital room, watching her gradually emerge from the fog Gustav had kept her in. The first time she recognized me, really recognized me, I couldn't stop crying. "My brave girl," she whispered, her voice still weak but clearer than it had been in months. "You figured it out." The recovery was slow. Months of physical therapy to regain strength Gustav had stolen from her. Neurological assessments to determine the extent of the damage. Some effects were permanent, a slight tremor in her left hand, occasional memory gaps, but she was alive. She was herself again. Dr. Gustav's trial revealed the full scope of his plan. He'd been systematically stealing Mom's research, planning to patent the substance delivery system himself after her death. The rare autoimmune condition was completely fabricated. Every symptom had been induced by his careful poisoning regimen, designed to mimic a real disease while slowly unaliving her. He'd counted on a grieving family being too overwhelmed to ask questions. He hadn't counted on a 14-year-old girl who'd inherited her mother's scientific mind and stubborn streak. The prosecutor showed the jury my photos, the chemical analysis I'd pieced together from Mom's own research. My chemistry teacher testified about receiving the evidence and immediately recognizing the significance. Even with the best defense lawyer money could buy, Gustav couldn't explain away the modified neurotoxin in Mom's system or the falsified medical records. 25 to life, that was his sentence. Mom was in the courtroom when they read it, sitting between Dad and me. She didn't look at Gustav off once. We sold the house 6 months later. Too many memories of those horrible months when our guest room had been a prison disguised as a medical facility. We found a smaller place closer to the university, where Mom gradually returned to her research. Her team had kept the project going, waiting for her return. The substance delivery system was eventually completed and patented under Mom's name. It's being used in hospitals around the world now, helping cancer patients receive treatment with fewer side effects. Every time Mom gets a letter from a patient or their family, she pins it to the bulletin board in her new home office. Dad started seeing a therapist to deal with the guilt of not recognizing what was happening. I went too, working through the trauma of those months and the weight of being the one who'd saved my mother's life. Some nights I still dream about finding her in that van, 4 lines ready to deliver a fatal dose. But mostly, I remember the good things. Mom making breakfast in her lab coat again, though she moves a bit slower now. The 3 of us having dinner together, really together, not with a monster in our midst. The way she still draws formulas in the bathroom mirror steam, though now her hand shakes slightly. My high school guidance counselor says I have a bright future in chemistry or medicine. Maybe I do. I've certainly had more practical experience than most teenagers, but sometimes I think about becoming a detective or an investigator instead. I was good at seeing what others missed, at putting pieces together when everyone else was too emotional or trusting to look closely. Gustav had been right about one thing. I was my mother's daughter. He just hadn't realized what that really meant. It meant I wouldn't give up. It meant I'd keep searching for answers even when adults patted my head and told me to leave it to the experts. It meant I'd save her, no matter what it took. Mom's back in her lab now, working on new projects. The tremor in her hand doesn't slow her down much. She's developed workarounds, adaptations. That's what scientists do. They find solutions. Sometimes she'll catch me watching her and smile. My superhero, she'll say, reversing our old joke. But I know the truth. Real heroes aren't people in capes who swoop in to save the day. They're the ones who pay attention, who ask questions, who refuse to accept easy answers when something feels wrong. They're the ones who keep fighting even when no one believes them. And sometimes, they're just teenagers who love their moms enough to learn chemistry from old textbooks and piece together the truth from chemical formulas and modified compounds. I wonder what Dr. Gustav's real connection to Mom's research was before all this started. His quick arrival at the hospital and immediate decision to move in feels oddly prepared, like he'd been waiting for this moment to happen somehow. Sometimes heroes are just ordinary people who choose to act when it matters most. That's the story of how I saved my mom's life and sent her would-be killer to prison. Not with superpowers or special training, but with stubbornness, love, and a refusal to let someone I trusted hurt the person I loved most. Dr. Gustav thought he was the smartest person in the room. He thought a grieving family would be too broken to fight back. He thought a 14-year-old girl would be too young to understand complex chemistry. He was wrong about everything. The police released Mom from the hospital into our care after clearing her medically. I watched Dad sign the discharge papers with shaking hands, while 2 officers stood guard outside her room. They'd assigned protection until they could locate Dr. Gustav, who had vanished from the motel before they arrived. Back home felt different. I helped Mom into bed while Dad installed new locks on every door. The guest room stood empty, medical equipment removed as evidence. I caught Mom staring at the doorway sometimes, her hands trembling more than usual. That first night, I slept on Mom's floor. Every creak of the house made me bolt upright. Dad paced the hallway, checking windows. Around 3 in the morning, Mom's breathing changed. I scrambled to her side, but she was just having a nightmare. Her eyes flew open, unfocused and terrified. I held her hand until she recognized me. The tremor in her left hand was worse when she was scared. Dad appeared in the doorway, and we all sat together until dawn, nobody saying much. The silence felt safer than words. School became impossible. I'd sit in chemistry class thinking about neurotoxin compounds, while my classmates worried about periodic tables. My teachers noticed my distraction. The principal called Dad, suggesting I take some time off. I refused. Staying home meant watching Mom struggle with basic tasks, seeing Dad jump at every phone call. My chemistry teacher, Mrs. Chen, kept me after class one day. She'd been the one who forwarded my evidence to her FBI contact. Now she studied me with concern, noting the dark circles under my eyes. I explained that the police hadn't found Gustav yet. She made me promise to call her if anything felt wrong. The first sign came 3 days later. I found a note tucked into my locker at school, typed on plain paper. It contained a single line of chemical formula, one I recognized from Mom's research. My hands shook as I photographed it and texted Mrs. Chen. She met me in the hallway within minutes, her face grave as she examined the formula. We went straight to the principal's office. He called the police while Mrs. Chen stayed with me. The officers who came were the same ones from the hospital. They bagged the note as evidence and swept my locker for fingerprints. Nothing useful turned up. Dad picked me up early, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. At home, Mom was working at the kitchen table, trying to write with her good hand. She'd been documenting everything she remembered about Gustav's treatments for the investigation. When she saw our faces, her pen stilled. I showed her the photo of the formula. Her face went pale. She explained it was from her unpublished research, work only she and Gustav knew about. It represented a compound that could permanently damage neural pathways if administered incorrectly. The implications made my stomach turn. That night, Dad moved Mom's bed into their walk-in closet and barricaded the bedroom door. I dragged my mattress in too. We were 3 people trying to make ourselves invisible in our own home. The police increased patrols on our street, but it didn't help the feeling of being watched. The second note appeared in my backpack during lunch. I'd been sitting with friends, trying to pretend everything was normal. When I reached for my textbook, my fingers found the folded paper. Same typed format, but this time it was an address, a storage facility across town. I didn't go to my next class. Instead, I found Mrs. Chen and showed her the note. She immediately called the police and my dad. Within an hour, officers were searching the storage unit. They found boxes of medical supplies, stolen lab equipment from the university, and vials of various compounds. Gustav had been planning this for months. Among the evidence was a journal detailing his experiments, not just on Mom, but on lab animals first. He'd perfected his poisoning technique through trial and error. The entries showed a methodical mind twisted by jealousy and greed. He believed Mom's research belonged to him since he'd been her partner. Dad pulled me out of school after that. The police said Gustav was escalating, trying to intimidate us. They assigned a detective to our case full-time, Detective Martinez. Martinez, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She installed panic buttons in our house and gave us each a GPS tracker to carry. Mom's recovery hit a plateau. The physical therapy wasn't helping as much anymore. Some days her tremor was so bad she couldn't hold a cup. The neurologist explained that certain damage might be permanent. I watched Mom process this news, saw something harden in her eyes. She wasn't giving up, just recalibrating. We developed new routines. I helped Mom with her research documentation while Dad worked from home. We ordered groceries online, avoided predictable schedules. Detective Martinez checked in twice daily. It felt like living in a bunker, waiting for a storm to hit. The storm came on a Tuesday. I was helping Mom with her hand exercises when the doorbell rang. Dad checked the security camera. It was a delivery driver with a package. We weren't expecting anything. He called Detective Martinez before answering. The package contained Mom's favorite tea from a specialty shop downtown. The card read, "Get well soon," with no signature. Detective Martinez had it tested immediately. The tea was laced with the same neurotoxin Gustav had been using, but at a lethal concentration. One cup would have unalived her. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. Gustav knew our routines, our preferences. He was showing us how easily he could reach us. Mom held me while Dad talked with Detective Martinez about safe houses. But Mom refused to run. She said Gustav wanted us scared and scattered. We needed to stay together, stay smart. I started thinking like Gustav. If I wanted to hurt someone without getting caught, how would I do it? I made lists of vulnerabilities in our daily routines. Dad thought I was being morbid, but Mom understood. She helped me think through scenarios, teaching me to spot patterns and anticipate moves. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mom's research assistant, Victoria, called about a discrepancy in the lab inventory. Several compounds were missing, ones that weren't related to the criminal case. Mom asked her to check the access logs. Gustav's keycard had been used 2 nights ago. Detective Martinez moved fast. Security footage from the university showed a figure in a hoodie using Gustav's card. The build was wrong, too short, too slight. Someone else was helping him. The investigation suddenly expanded. They pulled footage from the whole week and found 3 more instances of the mystery person accessing the lab. Mom recognized the walk. It was Dr. Sarah Mills, a junior researcher who'd always resented Mom's success. She'd been passed over for promotions, grants, recognition. Gustav had found the perfect accomplice, someone with access and motive. The police couldn't find Sarah either. She'd cleared out her apartment, quit her job via email, but she'd made one mistake. Her car was caught on traffic cameras heading toward the industrial district. Detective Martinez organized a search team while keeping us under protective watch. I felt useless sitting at home while others hunted for Gustav. Mom sensed my frustration. She pulled out her old research notebooks, the handwritten ones from before everything was digital. Together, we mapped out every project Gustav had known about, looking for patterns in what he'd stolen. One project stood out. Mom had been developing a compound that could reverse certain types of neural damage, specifically damage caused by toxins like the one Gustav had used on her. She'd been close to a breakthrough before she got sick. If Gustav had that research, he could create an antidote for himself in case of accidental exposure. I pointed this out to Detective Martinez. She got a warrant for Gustav's university office, which had been sealed since his disappearance. Hidden in a locked drawer, they found Mom's missing research notes on the neural repair compound. He'd been stealing her work piece by piece for years. The knowledge that an antidote might exist gave Mom new determination. She threw herself into reconstructing her research from memory, fighting through the tremors and fog. I became her hands, writing formulas as she dictated them. Dad learned to read her shorthand when the tremor made writing impossible. 2 weeks into our lockdown, something shifted. The notes stopped coming. No more packages appeared. Detective Martinez said it could mean Gustav was planning something bigger. They'd tracked Sarah's car to an abandoned warehouse, but found it empty except for chemical residue that matched compounds from the university lab. Mom had a theory. Gustav needed specific equipment to synthesize the antidote. Equipment that wasn't portable. He'd have to use a professional lab. Detective Martinez got a list of every private research facility within 100 miles. Officers started checking them systematically. I couldn't sleep that night. Something felt wrong about the sudden silence. Gustav had been escalating, then nothing. I crept to Mom's closet bedroom and found her awake too, staring at her research notes. She showed me a formula she'd been working on. If Gustav was synthesizing the antidote, he'd need one specific compound that was incredibly rare. Only 3 suppliers in the state carried it. Detective Martinez had the suppliers flagged, but Mom shook her head. Gustav was too smart for that. He'd find another way. Then it hit me. The university had a small supply in a restricted storage area. Only department heads had access. I called Detective Martinez at 5 in the morning. She didn't sound surprised to hear from me. Within an hour, university security confirmed a breach in the restricted storage. The compound was gone, along with several other chemicals that, when combined, could create a powerful sedative. Mom went rigid when she heard the list. She recognized the combination. It was similar to what Gustav had used to keep her unconscious in the van, but this version would be stronger, longer lasting. He was planning to take someone, and he wanted them unconscious for days. Detective Martinez doubled our protection. An officer now stayed inside our house at all times, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were missing something. Gustav had spent months in our home. He knew things about us that we'd forgotten ourselves. That afternoon, while helping Mom with her exercises, I noticed her staring at the kitchen calendar. Her face had gone pale. I followed her gaze to the date circled in red, her follow-up appointment with the neurologist. The appointment she'd made months ago, when Gustav was still playing the concerned colleague. We called Detective Martinez immediately. She contacted the neurologist's office, but their system showed the appointment had been canceled last week. Someone had called claiming to be Mom, rescheduling for a different location, a private clinic on the outskirts of town. The pieces clicked together. Gustav was expecting us to show up at that clinic. He'd been silent because he was preparing his trap. Detective Martinez wanted to send officers to arrest him, but Mom had a different idea. If Gustav thought his plan was working, we could use that against him. The next 2 days were spent planning. Mom worked with Detective Martinez to create a convincing decoy scenario. They'd send an undercover officer who looked similar to Mom, wearing her clothes and using her wheelchair. I fought to be included, but Dad absolutely refused. The memory of finding Mom in that van was too fresh. The morning of the fake appointment arrived gray and drizzling. I watched from our living room window as the decoy left in an unmarked police car. Dad paced while Mom gripped my hand. Her tremor was barely noticeable, adrenaline steadying her nerves. Detective Martinez called an hour later. They'd arrested Sarah Mills in the clinic parking lot. She'd been waiting with a syringe of sedative, ready to inject the decoy, but Gustav wasn't there. Under interrogation, Sarah broke down. She revealed Gustav's real location. He'd been hiding in a foreclosed house 3 blocks from us. The raid happened fast. Officers surrounded the house while we waited, clustered around Detective Martinez's radio. I heard shouting, doors breaking, then silence. Long minutes passed before Martinez's voice crackled through. They had him. Gustav was in custody, but something was wrong. When they searched the house, they found evidence that made Detective Martinez call for hazmat teams. Gustav had been manufacturing compounds, not just the antidote, but new versions of the neurotoxin. Vials labeled with dates showed he'd been planning a final attack. Mom's hands shook as Detective Martinez explained what they'd found. Gustav had journaled his plans extensively. If he couldn't have Mom's research, he'd destroy her ability to continue it. The new toxin was designed to cause complete paralysis. He'd planned to inject her at the fake appointment, leaving her alive but unable to work, speak, or care for herself. The evidence was overwhelming. Gustav's lawyer tried to claim mental instability, but his methodical planning showed clear premeditation. Sarah Mills agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. She detailed how Gustav had manipulated her, promising her recognition and advancement if she helped him. During the investigation, more victims came forward. 2 other researchers had suffered mysterious illnesses in the past 5 years. Both had been working on projects that competed with Gustav's. One had recovered after months of unexplained symptoms. The other had been forced into early retirement due to cognitive damage. Mom insisted on meeting with these researchers. Together, they pieced together Gustav's pattern. He'd been systematically eliminating competition for years, using his medical knowledge to create untraceable illnesses. Mom had simply been his most ambitious target. The trial date was set for 6 months out. Mom threw herself into recovery with new determination. She had to be strong enough to testify, to face Gustav in court. I helped her practice her testimony, working through the emotional and physical challenges of reliving those months. But recovery wasn't linear. Some days the tremor was so bad she couldn't feed herself. Other days, she'd have breakthrough moments in her research. Dad and I learned to celebrate small victories. A steady hand for 5 minutes, a complex formula remembered perfectly. I returned to school eventually, but everything felt different. My classmates complained about homework while I thought about neurotoxins. Friends invited me to movies while I scheduled Mom's therapy appointments. The normal teenage world felt like a foreign country. Mrs. Chen became my anchor. She arranged for me to do advanced chemistry work, channeling my trauma into learning. She said knowledge was power, and I'd already proven I could use it to save lives. Under her guidance, I started understanding Mom's research at a deeper level. One evening, Mom called me into her makeshift office. She'd been working on something for weeks, keeping it secret even from Dad. On her computer screen was a chemical formula I didn't recognize. She explained it was a potential treatment for the type of neural damage Gustav had caused, not just in her, but in his other victims too. The research was preliminary, but promising. Mom had been corresponding with neurologists around the world, sharing her unique insight as both researcher and victim. If she could develop this treatment, she could help everyone Gustav had hurt. That night, I found Dad crying in the kitchen. He'd been so strong through everything, but the weight was crushing him. I made him tea while he talked about the guilt of not seeing what Gustav was doing, the fear of almost losing Mom, the anger that still burned in his chest. We sat together until Mom joined us, moving slowly but determinedly. She'd heard Dad's breakdown from her office. Without words, she wrapped her arms around us both. We were broken in different ways, but we were together. That had to count for something. The months passed in a blur of therapy appointments, research sessions, and legal preparations. Mom's tremor improved marginally, though she'd never have full dexterity again. She adapted, using voice recognition software and teaching me to be her hands for delicate work. Gustav tried to contact Mom through his lawyer, claiming he wanted to apologize. Mom refused. She had no interest in his manipulation disguised as remorse. Detective Martinez warned us he might try to plea bargain, but the evidence was too strong. He was going away for a long time. As the trial approached, I noticed changes in our family. Dad had become hypervigilant, installing security systems that rivaled government buildings. Mom pushed herself too hard, determined to show Gustav hadn't broken her, and I'd lost the ability to trust easily, questioning everyone's motives. We started family therapy, learning to process our trauma together. The therapist helped us see that healing wasn't about returning to who we were before. That was impossible. Instead, we had to build new versions of ourselves, incorporating what we'd survived. Mom's research progressed faster than anyone expected. Her personal experience gave her insights other researchers had missed. She published her preliminary findings, dedicating the paper to all those whose trust was weaponized against them. The scientific community responded with overwhelming support. 3 weeks before the trial, Gustav's lawyer filed a motion to suppress evidence, claiming illegal search and seizure. Detective Martinez assured us it was a desperate move, but the hearing still made us nervous. Mom had to testify about giving permission for the searches while incapacitated. The judge dismissed Gustav's motion in less than an hour. Mom's testimony was clear and compelling, despite her tremor. She detailed how Gustav had manipulated her condition to prevent her from seeking help or questioning his methods. The judge's disgust was evident in his ruling. With the trial looming, we prepared for the final confrontation. Mom practiced her testimony until she could recite it despite tremors or memory gaps. Dad arranged time off work to be there every day, and I studied the evidence files, ready to support Mom however she needed. The night before jury selection, we sat together in Mom's office, surrounded by her research. She was working on the neural repair treatment, determined to find hope in the devastation Gustav had caused. I helped her document her latest findings while Dad made dinner. As I watched Mom work, I realized something had shifted. The tremor was still there, the damage still real, but she'd found a way to transform her suffering into purpose. Gustav had tried to steal her life's work, but instead, he'd given her a new mission. Detective Martinez called with a final update. Gustav had rejected a last-minute plea deal, insisting on going to trial. He still believed he could convince a jury that he'd been trying to help Mom. His delusion would be his downfall. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the journey from that birthday night night when I'd found Mom trying to write on a napkin. We'd survived Gustav's poison, his manipulation, his attempts to destroy us. The foreclosed house 3 blocks away makes me wonder how long Gustav was watching them while they worried about him being far away. Sarah Mills breaking down so quickly seems convenient, but maybe she was just in over her head with Gustav's schemes. Tomorrow, we'd face him one last time, and we were ready. The trial started on a Monday morning that felt too ordinary for what was about to happen. I sat between Mom and Dad in the courtroom, watching Gustav enter in handcuffs. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt, but his eyes still held that calculating look I remembered from the night I'd found him in Mom's office. Mom's hand trembled as she gripped mine. Not from fear, I realized, but from anticipation. She'd waited months for this moment. Dad's jaw was set, his other hand resting protectively on Mom's shoulder. We were a united front, exactly what Gustav hadn't expected when he'd started his poisoning campaign. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. Evidence I'd gathered, the modified neurotoxin formula, Gustav's journal entries detailing his experiments, each piece built on the last, creating an undeniable picture of premeditated, attempted unaliving. Gustav's lawyer tried to object repeatedly, but the judge overruled him each time. When they called Mom to testify, she moved slowly but steadily to the witness stand. Her voice was clear as she described the months of increasing weakness, the confusion as her body betrayed her. She explained how Gustav had isolated her from other medical opinions, increased sedatives whenever she tried to work, manipulated Dad's trust. The defense attorney tried to shake her during cross-examination, suggesting her memory was compromised by the neurotoxin. Mom calmly recited chemical formulas from memory, explaining exactly how Gustav's poison had affected specific neural pathways. The jury leaned forward, captivated by her scientific precision despite her visible tremor. I testified next, describing finding Mom on her birthday, discovering the connection between her research and Gustav's treatments, the night at the hospital when he'd tried to take her. The prosecutor showed my photos of Mom's research files, the timestamps proving I'd documented everything before Gustav could destroy evidence. Mrs. Chen testified about receiving my evidence and immediately recognizing its significance. She explained how a 14-year-old had pieced together what trained investigators might have missed, simply through determination and love for her mother. Several jurors wiped their eyes during her testimony. The other victims testified via video link. One researcher described months of mysterious symptoms that had nearly ended her career. Another explained how his illness had forced him to abandon groundbreaking research that would have competed with Gustav's work. Their stories painted a pattern of calculated elimination of rivals. Sarah Mills took the stand on day 3, her plea deal contingent on her testimony. She detailed how Gustav had approached her, playing on her resentment of Mom's success. She'd helped him access the lab, steal research, even prepare the final paralytic toxin. Her voice shook as she admitted she'd known what they were doing was wrong, but felt trapped. Gustav's defense was pitiful. His lawyer argued mental breakdown, stress from academic pressure, misguided attempts to help a colleague. But the evidence was too methodical, too calculated. When Gustav himself took the stand, his arrogance became his downfall. He tried to explain his actions as medical innovation, claimed Mom's symptoms were real and he'd been treating them. But when the prosecutor asked him to explain the neurotoxin in her system, he fumbled. When shown his own journal entries about eliminating competition, he tried to claim they were taken out of context. The moment that sealed his fate came when the prosecutor asked about the paralytic toxin found in the foreclosed house. Gustav's mask slipped. For just a second, rage flashed across his face as he realized his final plan had been discovered. The jury saw it. Everyone saw it. Closing arguments took most of day 4. The prosecutor walked the jury through the evidence chronologically, showing how Gustav had planned everything from the beginning. The defense made one last attempt to paint Gustav as a troubled genius who'd lost his way, but it rang hollow after days of damning evidence. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. As we waited in a small room, Mom worked on her research notes, her way of staying calm. Dad paced while I helped Mom with calculations, my hands steady where hers trembled. Detective Martinez stayed with us, assuring us the quick deliberation was a good sign. When they called us back, the courtroom was packed. Gustav stood as the jury foreman read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Attempted unaliving, assault with a deadly weapon, theft of intellectual property, fraud. The list went on. Gustav's face went white with each guilty verdict. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month, but we already knew Gustav would spend decades in prison. As court officers led him away, he turned to look at Mom one last time. She met his gaze steadily, no longer the weak victim he'd created. He looked away first. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. We'd agreed beforehand to give no interviews. This wasn't about publicity or revenge. It was about justice and moving forward. Detective Martinez helped us reach our car through the crowd, her steady presence a comfort even now. The drive home was quiet. Dad finally relaxed his death grip on the steering wheel. Mom stared out the window, processing. I watched them both. These people who'd survived something unimaginable because we'd refused to give up on each other. That evening, we ordered takeout from Mom's favorite restaurant, the one she hadn't been able to enjoy during the months of poisoning. She managed to use chopsticks despite the tremor, a small victory that made us all smile. We didn't talk about the trial. We talked about normal things, my upcoming chemistry exam, Dad's work project, Mom's research progress. Over the next weeks, we settled into new routines. Mom's research on neural repair treatments accelerated now that she could focus without the looming trial. I spent afternoons in her home lab, learning techniques that most college students wouldn't encounter. Dad gradually removed some of the excessive security measures, though he kept the good locks. The sentencing hearing was almost anticlimactic. The judge gave Gustav 40 years, noting the calculated nature of his crimes and the lasting damage to his victims. Sarah Mills received 5 years with possibility of parole in 2. Mom didn't attend. She was busy that day, working with her research team on a breakthrough that could help thousands. Mom's tremor never fully went away. Some days were better than others. She developed her own adaptations, special grips for lab equipment, voice-controlled computer programs, a research assistant who served as her hands for delicate procedures. She published papers regularly, each one advancing the field of neural repair. I threw myself into advanced chemistry studies. Mrs. Chen connected me with a summer program at the university, where I could work alongside graduate undergraduate students. My experience had given me a unique perspective on the intersection of chemistry and criminal justice. College recruiters were already expressing interest. Dad found his own path to healing. He joined a support group for family members of crime victims, though he rarely spoke about our specific experience. He became the person who made coffee, who listened, who offered quiet support to others navigating trauma. 6 months after the trial, Mom's first neural repair treatment was approved for clinical trials. The researcher who'd been forced into early retirement was among the first volunteers. Watching Mom explain the treatment to him, seeing hope replace resignation in his eyes, I understood that justice came in many forms. We moved again, to a house closer to Mom's new lab. This time, we chose it together, looking for good light and space for Mom's home office. The guest room became my study space, filled with chemistry textbooks and molecular models. No medical equipment, no monitors, no IV stands. Mom and I published a paper together on detecting modified neurotoxins in biological samples. It was technical, dense with formulas and methodology, but at its core was a simple truth. Paying attention saves lives. The paper was well received in the scientific community, cited frequently in subsequent research. As I prepared for graduation, colleges competed for my admission. My unusual background, the teenager who'd saved her mother through chemistry, made me stand out. But I chose a program based on its research opportunities, not its prestige. Mom had taught me that real achievement came from the work itself. The night before I left for college, we had dinner as a family. Mom's hands were steady enough to serve the meal she'd cooked. Dad told embarrassing stories about my childhood. We laughed more than we had in years. Gustav's shadow had finally faded. I still have the photos on my phone, the evidence that saved Mom's life. Sometimes I look at them, remembering that night when I'd pieced together the truth. But mostly, I look forward to my studies, to the research I'll do, to the people I might help someday. Mom continues her work, developing new treatments, mentoring young researchers, building the legacy Gustav tried to steal. Her tremor is part of her now, like her brilliant mind and stubborn determination. She wears her lab coat to make breakfast sometimes, drawing formulas in the steam on the mirror for Dad to find. We survived because we refused to be victims, because a 14-year-old girl loved her mother enough to learn chemistry, because a family chose to fight back with science and determination. Gustav thought he was the smartest person in the room, but he'd forgotten that wisdom isn't just about knowledge, it's about how you use it. Mom was right all those years ago. Her lab coat was her superhero cape. She'd taught me that heroes use their powers to help others, to fight for truth, to protect the people they love. In the end, that's exactly what we did. Not with superpowers or dramatic confrontations, but with careful observation, scientific method, and an unshakable belief in each other. The formula for our survival was simple. Love plus determination equals justice. No complex chemistry required. Thanks for reading this story with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. I will see you in the next one.